Welcome to BNOW, where we discuss what is happening in and around Brampton. Tonight we're going to talk about international students. There's a couple of Facebook posts in regards to several students from India that were basically, they died. We don't know the cause, and we don't know basically any other details than that. There has been nothing in the papers. It was posted on Facebook. But it brings out a whole big scenario in regards to international students. The Globe and Mail just recently in January wrote an article in regards to the international students in Brampton and the challenges that they face, especially when coming to Canada and Brampton specifically. The two main colleges in Brampton, we have Sheridan and Algoma, but we also have private colleges as well, where the international students come over here for all sorts of different programs. Canada is the fourth largest destination for foreign students, and they bring in at least 450,000 students a year. And colleges and universities charge 3 to 4 times higher rates than domestic people for foreign students to come over. So they are making a lot of money, 3 to 4 times, and sometimes as high as 5 times. It depends on which program you're taking. So not everything is rosy. They come over here looking for an education. They have to pay immigration consultants to get their visa to come over here in the first place. And then when they get there, they have to pay 3 to 4 times the tuition. You also have a language barrier in some regards. The cost once you get here, accommodations, you're far from home, and you have limited and no social support. So it's not as rosy as a picture is painted on the other end, especially, let's say, from India, where a lot of those international students come to Brampton. And to talk about this, joining me now is Darshan Maharaja. Welcome, Darshan.
Thank you, Don. Thank you for having me.
It's not the first time we had you on. It probably won't be the last. We always enjoy talking to you, especially from your different perspective, other than a lot of people. So international students specifically, you posted those 2 Facebook pages of the students that basically died, and there was no information. What have you found out today?
Well, I discovered in the last 2 days that media as a policy doesn't cover suicide cases. So I understand the sensitivities around that, but then when it's happening on such a regular level, it leaves us with no information to work on. I even checked the Twitter timeline of Peel Police, and again, I'm assuming that these were living in Brampton, although one was supposed to be or said to be studying in North York and the other one in Toronto. But from the Facebook post that I saw, it looked like they were living in Brampton. So I checked the timeline of Peel Police. There is nothing going back 6 days. And these 2 deaths occurred after 15th, the first one on 15th.
All right. So basically, Darshan, we don't have any news, but we do know one thing. Brampton seems to be a massive destination for students coming over from India.
Yes.
And especially now with the rise of the middle class, they're looking for an education. Why? What's on the other end in India that's bringing a lot of international students or from students from India to Brampton specifically?
Well, first of all, their large population, almost 1.4 billion, so not everybody may see a good prospect for themselves there. Then there is always this desire to move out that is more pronounced among certain ethnicities historically, and that's mostly in the western part of India, including Punjab, but not limited to it. So what happens is the families will either sell whatever land they have, or there are even banks giving loans for foreign studies with the collateral of land. So that barely suffices in some cases for the first term fees. So the expectation of the student is to land a job the moment they come here. They start working sometimes beyond the number of hours required because of the financial pressure. There we have seen reports that they get exploited, sometimes get underpaid or not paid at all. That serves to increase their financial stress, and because of that, unfortunately, there have been a lot of cases of suicide. But because of this media policy, we don't get to hear about it as much as we should to get a handle on this. We don't want to know.
You mentioned suicide. I know in that Globe and Mail report, they mentioned that basically they were talking 4 to 5 students a week they were dealing with in student deaths, basically. 4 to 5 a week. That's pretty high.
That's almost one a day, right? It's horrible.
Yeah, and you don't hear too much about it, right? So you were talking about employment. So when they come here on a student visa, they're only allowed basically, I think it's 20 hours a week on a student visa, right?
During the semester.
Right.
Otherwise 40 hours, yes.
So if they have to pay an immigration consultant to come to Canada, get the visa, then they have to pay 3 to 4 times the amount of tuition that the normal person, a Canadian citizen, has to pay. Plus, they have to deal with accommodations, which if they stay on the Sheridan campus, let's just say Sheridan campus is they have an opportunity to stay there. It's actually more than twice that they could deal with on a rooming house, right? So you're paying more to stay on campus than you are off. That's anywhere in university or colleges, right? Go through that. So you're paying more. Plus, you have to eat, and you have your bus fare and so on and so forth on top of that. So some of these students get wrapped up in, a whole bunch of different opportunities, which is not good. There's one is suicide. You've got gangs, drugs, prostitution, human trafficking, right? These are all the byproducts of these situations.
True. Well, first of all, their living conditions when they are living off campus are horrible. Uh, I have seen videos where they only have a mattress space and it costs them $260 a month. So 10, 15 students living in one basement. I remember one council meeting of Brampton where a couple of councillors had brought up the issue saying when they were campaigning for 2018 election, they saw 25 students living in a basement, but they didn't bother to report it or do anything about it.
Yeah, well, I think that, that's the one thing in Brampton that we talk about is we talk about, I saw a post by you saying the city put out saying they figured there's 10 to 20,000 illegal basement apartments in Brampton, and you retweeted saying more like 100 to 200,000.
Absolutely.
So, there is a problem in Brampton. It's been here for 8 years. I know that I think one councillor, I think Jeff Bowman was on the housing council to deal with this issue. And it's been 2 terms of council where actually nothing has been done to date. So you're still dealing with a situation of lack of housing in Brampton, especially for international students. Doesn't some of that responsibility fall on the Sheridan College in Algoma, the people that are making the money and bringing all these foreign students in?
I think it does, because by my reckoning, they are making tens of millions of dollars a year in these international students' fees. And I believe that it is incumbent on them to provide reasonably priced accommodation for these students who are anyway paying 3 times more or maybe even higher than local students. When somebody is coming from abroad, you know that they are going to need a place to live. They are not local students.
Yeah, and we all know in Brampton that there's not a lot of apartment buildings and student housing and so on and so forth to go with it. I know that Sheridan College just delegated in front of council talking about mental health and wanted some money for mental health in regards to students. But, we're dealing with basic necessities. If you deal with the basic necessities, 9 times out of 10, your mental health problems are going to be going away. Right? If you've got a place to stay and you've got it's clean, it's neat, and you can study and you don't have to be with 20 other people, it makes a big difference. I think that should be addressed first than dealing with mental health.
Yeah, dealing with mental health after it has become a problem is not the optimal way of going about it. Then it also knocks on to the other areas of life in the community, because when they are living 10, 15 in a basement, they can't spend time there other than to sleep. So they are then hanging around in plazas, and then local residents are complaining that they are creating a nuisance, sometimes, making noise and all. But it all goes back to having very suboptimal housing options. That is at the very root of this whole situation.
Well, there was I think you remember there was a plaza across from Sheridan College where there was a big fight. Somebody recorded it on their phone. It was on YouTube. I know the president of Sheridan College said, no, those are not our students. But it turned out, yes, some of them were your students, and that was another problem. So what you're talking about is an actual fact. So, going back to the whole business, I heard a great line, and basically it's business of immigration, not education.
That is very true. Because what happens is, I was there a few years ago, and I was in a tier B city. You can compare it with, let's say, St. Thomas or Brandon, Manitoba, that kind of a city. There was a local newspaper there which had put out a front page ad with photos of students that they were sending to Canada in that semester. And this was winter semester, and they had got 104 students coming here. And they had two other branches in two other tier B cities. So you can just imagine the kind of industrial scale activity that is going on there. And then they also sometimes resort to malpractice. For example, I remember reading about one case, it was, I think, in CBC, where the girl was given an admission letter by their agents, and she came here. It was in Toronto, a school in college in Toronto, and then she was told that things have changed and she has to go to Alberta. She went there, completed her studies, started working on a work permit. Just as she was about to apply for permanent residency, Canada Border Services got in touch with her saying that her original letter of admission was counterfeit and therefore she was going to be deported.
So, how big a business is it over in India for these immigration experts? I've heard that basically, as I said before, it's a business of immigration, not education. So, I mean, at their end, they're making money when they get their visas. Then you have the colleges and or universities making their money, and then you have unscrupulous sort of businesses taking advantage of university students as well. Everybody's making money, and except the students in regards to, are they getting a proper education, or is it just a mill?
Well, I have spoken to several students, and they were all working multiple jobs, and I asked them how they were able to concentrate on their studies with all these jobs, and they said the study is easy for us. I mean, maybe they come from very well grounded educational system. I don't know, but they find it like a, almost a cakewalk. Now, at the end, if it makes them ready for a good job, then no problem.
Well, here's a comment from Nawab here. Main responsibility falls on shared. Unfortunately, there have been fights, suicides, and girls falling prey to prostitution, which is what I said before, and never a statement from the college. The only statement I've seen from the college is to deny it and saying, we're asking for money from the city for the mental health, which I said before. They wouldn't have mental health problems if they fixed the original problems in the first place. If you're going to run a college or university, ensure that the students have a place, they're not exploited, there's an opportunity for them to get employment, and that falls on you. The Sheridan College asking for money for the taxpayers of Brampton to run their establishment or help them with a mental health, and fawning this off to us and saying, well, we're in your community and there's a problem that we created, but we need your help and your money, to me is kind of backward.
Well, maybe this is a harsh opinion, but I would ask what their corporate responsibility is, or the equivalent of corporate responsibility. If they are in the city and if they are making good money out of it, no issues. They have a right to do that. But then they have responsibilities attached to that. And their primary responsibility should be to their students, at least house them properly.
Do you think, this is one big thing. I mean, I went to university, I went to Concordia. It was basically, I was studying to be a history professor, which, didn't turn out the way I wanted. But at the same time, I see parents now, they bought in, universities are a business. They have been a business for many, many years, and they work like a business, they organize like a business, just like colleges or anything else. And parents seem to have bought into that. I need a BA, a PhD, an MA, an MBA, rather than going into the trades. Is this something that basically that you find as well?
Yeah, true. Because there is this allure of these university degrees or whatever. And at the end, ultimately, physical work will need to be done. So we have chronic shortages on the trades. And ever since I came to Canada about 18 years ago, I've been hearing about this, but that attitude has not shifted. And because of all the factors, the cost of that education keeps going up, while the employment prospects for the kind of education that students go into, that keeps declining. So, they are typically in what, 25, $30,000 in debt by the time they come out, local students. And
Yeah.
that is after the international students have subsidized their education.
Here's another comment. Actually, Suki here, can't blame Sheridan College only, but there are lots of private colleges. Absolutely correct. And that's where the business called, when we talked about colleges and universities, there's also private colleges as well that fall into this. And to talk about this in regards to where responsibilities lay, I mean, we talked about the college as well. We talked about what about the provincial and the federal responsibility for bringing these over, and the province for regulating colleges and universities and private colleges as well. Where does the responsibility lie for that?
Well, I would say all three levels of government are equally responsible for this, because at the federal level they treat these numbers of annual, number of students coming in as some kind of a sales quota badge of nobility, where if the number is higher, we are supposed to think of the federal government as being more noble. And then at the federal level, there is no effort to introduce some kind of a structure or regulation which would put things properly in place.
I think a lot of problem too is when you're an international student, you come here, it's a different country, you don't know the landscape, you don't know the whole situation. You tend to gravitate towards your own kind, which is a closed atmosphere. I know that there's organizations in Brampton like Indus Community Services that does a very good job in trying to acclimatize students and help them. That's one organization in Brampton. I don't know, do you know, plus you have the Gurdwas and temples and so on and so forth. But are there any other organizations that come to mind that if there's international students out there or someone watching that knows one that they can go to rather than going to, the normal standard mental health things?
Well, I went to Sheridan College once because I was told that there is going to be some kind of an introductory event for a new batch of students. And the senior students themselves had organized this, and they were giving very useful and valuable information to the new batch of students. So it's only at voluntary level. And while voluntary level is always appreciated, you need some kind of official structure to how international students are going to live here.
All right. Okay. Well, Darshan, you know what? This problem is not going away anytime soon. It's been around for 8 years. It seems to be something that's continuing and ongoing. So I'm sure we'll have this discussion again. We're going to sort of segue into another discussion about the Conservative Party leadership. Any thoughts on that?
It's early days yet. I'm seeing some reporting about Patrick Brown's comparative invisibility at the national level, although he's supposed to be working among the ethnic communities. I think he's going to pitch himself as a more a candidate who is more in tune with the diverse population of Canada.
More moderate. Do you think he's going to be a more moderate conservative? That's what he's looking to do?
Yeah, I think that's what appears like. Whereas Pierre Poilievre, for all the criticism that has been leveled at him, I think he's focusing on things like affordability and housing and all. So
it's funny that you talk about affordability in housing, because I mean he basically, from what I understand, is part and parcel owner of a company that does deal with housing speculation.
okay, I don't know that, but it would be speculative of me to say anything about it.
Well, it's funny. All the ones that basically have nice houses and everything else, they're the ones talking about the housing crisis and how do we fix it, right? You very rarely see a politician that doesn't live in a shack, right?
Yeah, I mean the days of Abraham Lincoln are gone.
Yeah.
From
I
a
think
log
even the day of
cabin.
Abraham Lincoln, when he graduated out of that log cabin, I mean, it was probably a little bit bigger than George Washington's house, but
Yeah.
still, I mean, we have a race. We have till June where they're trying to sign up as many memberships, and then after June, I think that's when you're going to see policy announcement from the others. It'll be an interesting race. What do you think of someone like Leslie Lewin jumping in
Leslie
again?
Lewis.
I mean, you know,
I don't think she has a realistic shot at becoming the leader.
why do you think someone like I've seen, I think 16 candidates, why do they even throw their hat in the ring when you know that they don't have a snowball's chance in hell?
Yeah, especially someone like Roman Baber, who was a conservative at the provincial level. Now he's no longer in the caucus. Maybe they have their own ideas that they want to bring to the table, because whether they win or lose, the ideas that they bring may continue to resonate with at least a segment of the people. I'll remind you of the uh, effort by
Kelly Leach, yes.
Kelly Leach, yeah. She's the one who started this whole defund the CBC thing, and it's still around. So that may also be one of the motivations.
You know, it's funny because it defund the CBC. Without the CBC, there wouldn't be a lot of Canadian content programs. I know, my brother's a stuntman and in the movie industry, and they've done a lot of stuff. They've supplied a lot of actors and actresses with the opportunity that they would not get in somewhere like the United States. So, homegrown talent does need a place to grow. And, to defund basically something like the CBC, are you going to defund the arts as well? I mean, without those programs, without the, something like the Canadian Orchestra or Philharmonic Orchestra or opera or, whatever. I mean, they're all subsidized to some degree. What are you going to eliminate everything to, just crash and burn everything?
True, but then the idea that she floated how many years ago, it's still around. Yeah. So they may be hoping to bring such ideas to the table.
They're trying to overthrow the elites, from what I understand. It could be the French Revolution all over again, right?
One set of elites will be replaced by another set of elites. So
deadline for approval of conservative land. I think basically they have up till June to register. I think June the 2nd is it June the 2nd? I think
June
somewhere
the 3rd,
along that line.
Yeah, June the 3rd.
June 3rd. Okay.
Yeah.
So if anyone wants to throw their hat in to be the Prime Minister of Canada, according to PP, you don't have to win the leadership. You can just become the Prime Minister if you want to run for it. So there seems to be a lot of people on Twitter claiming that they want to run for the Prime Ministership of Canada without having to actually get an endorsement by their party. So Pierre might want to understand the concept. As he's been an MP since he's been 25 or 30 or something. That's all. The only job he's ever had is being an MP. So he should understand he can't become the Prime Minister until he gets a blessing from the party.
Yeah, true. It's kind of a message for the faithful.
For the faithful. Okay. Well, we'll leave it at that, Darshan. I'm sure this is not going to be the last time we're going to be talking to you about either conservative leadership, the provincial election, or any kind of situation.
Thank you, Don.
Our Canadian Journey and Podbean, correct?
That's right.
Okay. And you talk about all sorts of different issues as well that seem to come to mind. So if anyone wants to follow Darshan, you can follow him on his podcast. Thank you for joining us, Darshan. We'll see you next Tuesday, and we'll see what we can talk about then. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Don. Always a pleasure.